How's it going, folks? I'm Matt, this is Photosynthetic, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Bean. Today, we have a very special guest. Derek from Sunleaf Seed Co. has joined us here, coming on some very good recommendations from the community. That's where we're finding a lot of these awesome breeders who we've been chatting with. Derek, welcome to the show, man. Happy to have you here today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And of course, we're
Excited.
here to talk cannabis and breeding and all that fun stuff. And, I really want to kind of get into the meat of things. But first, man, why don't you give me some background? Tell me about, how you got into growing to begin with.
Yeah, I started in 2008. We started kind of in Colorado, and when all of the medical wave hit, and picked up some clones from the store and started growing, and it was a way for us to, at that time still, it was hard to find flour, like you'd have to call three or four people. So it was just a means to supply ourselves. We weren't trying to do it for profit. It was just to be able to grow some for ourselves. And then, it just kind of grew from there. Like most people find, you get yourself a small tent and, a year later you have two of them and then you have, bigger ones and bigger ones. So
Cascades.
yeah, it just continued to snowball from that. And, started breeding in 2011, just making seeds for fun because we really couldn't find anything locally. You still had to order from Europe a lot, more often than not because things were still kind of weird. So, um, and just been expanding on top of that, like, since then.
Right on, right on. And obviously, it's working for you, making a name for yourself.
Yeah.
What about your growth style? Speak to that a little bit. You're an organic guy, salty guy, a little bit of both.
Gosh, I like to do both. I started out with doing organics, like a lot of people going like, with the traditional peat with a Fox Farm trio, you know. But I like everything, and that's goes with, what I was just saying about um growing within, growing. Wanting to try hydro, wanting to try all the different types of growing to see what really was the difference. So I've kind of done everything. I really enjoy hydroponics and deep water culture and the soilless mediums where we're using just water or just peat, and then I've done the full organics. We do that outside. And typically every season we do some big pots with like living soil in them. So we kind of do a little bit of everything. Um, personally, my favorite is cocoa, straight cocoa with salts, with salt nutrients.
Nice, nice. Do little crop staring, that sort of thing. Gives you that extra control.
Yeah, yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I don't really like to use anything but like a base nutrient for these crops, like when I'm doing my pheno hunting.
Yep.
And that way we can just see what the true genetic expression is at a baseline, and running a bunch of different uh variety against each other or whatever, but you really do get to see true expression in my opinion.
Oh, of course, of course. And letting the plant do its thing the first time is always so helpful. Just watch it and see what it does. What's your go-to for your base nutrient? What do you like using?
Gosh, I mean, it just depends on what scale. Back in the day when we would use liquid nutrients, I liked anything basic. Some the stuff that you can always get consistently was like Canna or House and Garden. My favorite, to be honest, is New Millennium. They're
Okay.
out of Colorado,
Yeah, not familiar.
and they have probably, uh, I think the best. It's a three-part basically, but uh, I've kind of used everything as far as powders go. Um, they all kind of seem the same. I really like Ambrosia Crop. We messed with that one for quite some time, but to be honest, like we get to a certain point in price point, and a lot of them are very similar.
Fair, fair. So bringing it back now to kind of start talking about the breeding thing. You touched on it earlier. You said 2011 you started making some beans. Speak to that. The reason why you really want to start doing that, and how your initial experiences went.
Yeah, so a lot of it had to do with not having seeds that were accessible,
Yeah.
you know, having to order from Europe. So we kind of would take what we had and pop them and just kind of make stuff for fun, make stuff for preservation. Like, hey, we're moving out of this place, and we've got this male. Let's let the male hit like three or four of the females before we have to pack up and move and reset. Because back
Yeah,
then, you didn't keep it wasn't as open where like you could just have somebody hold your stuff for you for a couple days or a week or whatever.
right.
So we were trying not to tell people what you're doing. And so we decided, we'll put a bunch of it in seed form so we can reaccess it later on when we want to. And it just kind of grew from there. We could, and originally when I started the company, it was with somebody who I was growing with back in 2011.
Yep.
So that's why I'm using we a lot. And we would basically just make these crosses and um, play with them, find females that we liked, run another 10 or 20, run them against each other, and then, look for a male and let the male hit three or four of them and just kind of play around until we got to a certain point in like 2016 where we were getting really awesome results with some of the strains that we had. And we just decided to like, you know, it was, and even in 2016, it was still hard to kind of find seeds in a local North America kind of level. So we decided to, just form a seed company. And, we picked out, a type of packaging that we wanted. We did all the legwork on what we wanted to, how we wanted to do it. And then we did like a two strain release and it was pretty well received actually. And from there, I just started hitting local shows.
Getting the name out, sharing
Yeah,
seed, letting
giving
people
out
try the
seed to
gear. Yeah.
people. And back then we were doing only regs, it didn't the feminization process wasn't as open, I would say. Like you couldn't find as much info
Hmm.
on certain things as you can like currently after all the hemp bill stuff passed and then you started having universities and farms be able to do university studies on stuff,
Yeah.
which really, really helped elevate like cannabis knowledge, because they're so closely related. So,
So then you talk about regs and fems. Where are you now? Is it something you prefer the regs? Do you want to push the fems? Mixture of both?
mhm. Yeah, to be honest, I like the femmes because it's a guaranteed female. You do have those lucky ones every once in a while. But for people growing on a smaller scale, like they can't, with plant restrictions and stuff, they don't want to pop 15 seeds,
Oh, I hear you.
to find half of them to be female. Um, so it's just a better option, I think, for the smaller farmer, or people who are space restricted. Um, but I really do prefer FEMs. It just seems like a more direct, you kind of know more what you're getting opposed to some of the regs, especially nowadays where everything's all polyhybridized. You're seeing stuff kind of all over the place, and in one pack you're going to find very different um, expressions that um, kind of, it's for somebody running production. That's kind of something that you don't want. You don't
Yep.
want to have a bunch of variation.
Yeah.
So as somebody who grows on production now, that's kind of like my MO is like uniformity, within the variety so that they don't have a bunch of variation that, I can give a predictable answer of what you're going to find. But
Absolutely. Absolutely.
it
So I guess
also
this,
says like, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
or it's really kind of lead into my next question is like talking about your process for selection. Then you're popping a pack. What are you looking for? How are you going about and deciding what's going to be good for production, for example?
Yeah. So more often than not, there is like kind of a list that you're kind of checking things against. The Obviously like somebody grows production, you're gonna want a certain amount of yield and it's got to test high and have high terps. And so you're kind of looking for that broad strain that kind of fills all those gaps. Um, And when you have ability to run a lot of them, you can actually kind of find those winners like that.
Right.
Um, but it is hard to say. Like there are certain times where I have a specific goal. I will make specific selections, maybe based off of color, like the recent series that I have, the Bloodwork series, which they actually bleed when you cut them.
Like was it Ganeshan? I think it's called, or what was the
No,
others?
that's like an expression off of the flower. This is
Oh, right. No,
almost
that's where it
like,
leaks off. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's like when you snip them, they do that.
So just like super anthocyanin rich that they're actually giving that purple blood, or I'm curious, man. You got a link that we can direct people
You
to?
know what? That's it's still one of those things that I'm kind of trying to figure out.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the I can't remember what the word is, but a lot of people have said that they're like, oh, it's rich in anthocyanin. I can't say it. And I don't know that that's what's causing that because I haven't seen anybody study it. It seems to be a pretty rare thing. It's becoming more common now, I've noticed, but I'm not sure that it's really been studied. I think a lot of people speculate that that's what it is. Like a high percentage of that is those. Um, but it's really hard for me to say. It's one of those things like we're going old school with where we're kind of going off the feel of it. You know, I'll go through, I pop like 25 of them and then segregate all the ones that bleed and then not bleed, and then even to the certain extent where that bleed heavily and
Oh,
find variation with too.
we're getting a little choppy
That's
there.
like a,
You tell me about when you're selecting between like you pop 25 beans, you're separating the ones that are showing a lot
yeah.
of bleeding, ones that aren't.
So in like a specific example of like having a goal that's based, not in production, what was for like a character trait was with the Bloodwork series where I popped, 25 of them to do this spring off project. Um, and categorizing them by if they bleed or if they don't bleed when you pluck a leaf off it. When you cut the leaves, everything like anytime you touch them or bend them or break them, they'll bleed. And within those two categories, bleeders and non-bleeders, you'll have a variation of ones that bleed slightly, like a slight color to them, and some that are just almost like purple or black.
That's
So,
wild.
and then this is kind of like variation that you're looking for in your selection process, where it's like, I'm selecting all of the ones that will be on the furthest scale towards the darkest color, so that trait is very like prominent in its percentage, um, and typically what I've seen with the feminization is when you select for certain traits like this, you'll see them in the next generation.
Yep.
You know, you will find like if you were to take, because I did all feminized with this series, um, if you take and use a reg, you could lose the traits potentially one or two generations down. Sometimes those males can just overpower any
Yeah.
of the
Push
genetic
out the
expression.
very interesting, man. That sounds like some super cool stuff. So we'll have to look out for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've got a couple of pictures on my page. If you guys on my Instagram,
yeah.
scroll down and you
We
can
will
see
link
them.
below there so you can take a look at that stuff for sure. Got me curious. So Derek, tell me more about what you consider, I guess, your signature strain, your best work. What would we want to get excited about?
Yeah, so this is one that I'm always excited about. I've been working on it since 2019. It's called Unleaded, and it's ice cream cake crust to sour diesel Nigerian,
Ooh,
and that's an inbred strain, and it's been selected over multiple generations for specific traits of like sour flavor with a really like Nigerian style high, a very sativa uplifting high. It's actually kind of racy. For people who have anxiety and stuff, I recommend that they don't really mess with it too much because it'll get your heart going. Um, and I've taken that a few different directions. I've done selections at the F1 stage and made S1s. I've inbred it to as a regular to F2 and F3, and done selections in F2 quite heavily, and then reversals with my F2 selection. And those traits that it puts out on the reversal are really like prominent. They always come through. All of the strains will have sandy resin. They'll have the unique buzz that we were selecting for with the Nigerian. And it's one of those where it's like you smoke it and it makes your heart race and you think you're gonna have a heart attack. And it's a really flavorful one too. I actually was just at a show a couple weeks ago. I had a couple bags of flour and I turned my back. I went in to go listen to the awards, and sure enough, I came back and all the other flour was still there, but the bag of unleaded was gone. So somebody snagged it.
Ah,
But that's probably my signature one that I've been working on for a long time. I do really enjoy all of the side projects I do. One thing I know that notice is like you do see some breeders really get focused on like one strain and they're just kind of putting it all over the place, or one line that they're using to make everything with. And I really do like variation. I love messing with new stuff and making new things, messing with old stuff with new stuff, land races with new stuff. So I really, it just kind of depends on what year it is. I might change my mind as far as, what we're working on.
very cool. Very cool. Talking about working on stuff. Anybody out there that you would love to work with? Any collabs maybe that you got going on right now?
Yeah, I do have a couple little things going on. A lot of stuff going on with some local farms down here in Southern Oregon. As far as seed companies, man, it's hard for me to say. There's a lot of guys who are on smaller scales than me who are doing really cool stuff where I find like somebody posts something on Instagram, then you see it and you're like, oh dude, that would be cool. Like I want a pack of that. Like let me run that one. Or so as far as people coming up, like I just say people to everybody who's messing with breeding, like keep doing it, because if you're doing it for fun, like how we started, like you're gonna make cool stuff and it's gonna attract attention. And that's kind of what it's about is like you know, it's really fun to have other people like validate something that you really liked and thought was good. And they go, yeah, that was good. I really like that. So
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to work with and that sort of thing. That's super awesome. Oh, and going back and talking then about breeding and selecting and stuff. The males. How do you like to go about selecting male? And then to that point, how long do you like to run your males?
yeah, as far as male selection goes, like I do really believe that, you should be running stuff on scale. Personally, I would really like to run a group and do a full run with the females to really see what the females are doing of this line
Hmm.
before I go and select my males. And I'm selecting for obviously like I do like it depends on the goal, but I do like vigorous plants. You will have this old um kind of idea that we all kind of learned from or started with that you want drug type cannabis, which would be stuff that might not have vigor, it might grow slower. Um, but I always found like it using weak males always made weak females and really like plants that were kind of all over the place, like, as far as structure goes, something that you wouldn't really want to grow. Um, so I like to select for, things like that. It can hold itself up, it supports big buds. Just a lot of the typical stuff, looking for males that have resin is always good. It seems like males that have really tight flower clusters. And I do like to grow my males out full term, because you get to see the full expression. You at 4 weeks they're dropping pollen, but you don't actually get to see what they're really going to do. And
Yeah.
selecting between three real winners, if you don't let them run to the end, like you don't really know which one's the real shining star. So I do like to let them run full term. And that's to be said, like I do like a lot of my regular breeding to have variation in it. So I will run more than one male and female in my filial line
Yeah, do a little
generations.
more open pollination type thing.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, and that's a term that's kind of gotten widely used to, open pollination to me is when we're using multiple strains and not just like a single strain with
Okay.
multiple males and females,
Okay.
right?
Interesting.
Um, so you are getting more variation, but it's all within the same gene pool. You're getting genetic expression. You're keeping the gene pool open because I've also found as you move up in generations, you're gonna be able to really honestly bottleneck it pretty quickly. So keeping your variation open between F1 to F3 or 4, I think makes for better options, and it's easy to bottleneck after that because you've already bottlenecked it slightly, um, as far as traits go. And you'll see these traits start popping up prominently, and then you can start making a selection to weed it down to bottleneck it. So that's kind of the theory that I've been using to do our generational breeding.
And how far do you typically like to go with the generational breeding? You like to put some F1s out, or is it more like you want to F2, F3s?
Yeah, I do like F1s. I do think that a lot of the stuff that you're getting from everybody right now, uh, as a nomenclature, they call it F1, but it's really a polyhybrid, and you're getting expressions from a lot of different plants because there's a really high potential with, especially guys using clone onlys and stuff like that, where stuff's already related in some sort of fashion.
Right.
So you're not necessarily seeing a true F1. Um, but I do like to do F1s. I do have some true F1s or stuff I would consider true F1s where you were to pop them. They are the most uniform at F1, technically. As you move up, it kind of goes like this, back down. And I, I, I prefer, the true F1s. You can pop 100 of them, and I can tell you, how many phenotypes you're gonna have. With some of these other ones, it's kind of all over the place. You might have 5 or 6 different type of expressions, um, and you wouldn't see those if you only ran 10 of them. So there is definitely a big thing of breeding and doing selection through generational breeding and running stuff on scale and really being able to see what the genetic expression is before you make the selections to move forward. I
Very
do think
fair.
it's really important.
Yeah. So you're doing a big hunt. Like, what do you like to pop for the amount of beans? Do you like, 20, 30, 50, 200, as many as you can?
Yeah, it really depends on what you're looking at or looking for. And to be honest, like, I've done a couple of times, really high seed numbers, and you do find um, a lot of really good plants, and it's a struggle to move forward. I definitely think it depends on what you're looking for, but a hundred seeds regulars is really nice to look through, and you will get to see all the expression. Running up to 1,000 of the same strain, you're just gonna see a lot of the same. You're really gonna see dialing in the what is like the meat of the expression. Where
Yeah.
like, hey, you know, 7,500 or 750 of these look just like this, and then you have all the ones on the ends there where they're like, this one looks better, this one smells better on this side, it has this expression. So um as you increase the numbers, it just seems to like give you a broader spectrum, but I'd
Yeah.
say like 100 is good. 25 is good. I also say for guys on small scale, like it can take you longer, but pop 20, and find 3 keepers, and then pop another 20 and find 3 keepers and run those keepers together. And you'll be able to kind of really see more than you would if you only ran 10 or 20.
Oh, for sure, for sure. More chance of finding the outliers as opposed to all that stuff. This is kind of the top of that bell curve. Uh, so, yeah, I mean, what about culling? You pop 100 seeds. Do you start going like 2 weeks in and go, you're a runt, you're not going to do it. You're a runt, you're not going to do it, and just start whittling those numbers down, or are you going to try and let things go as far as you can before you really start thinning out the herd?
Yeah, I actually will go through and cull anything that's weak after like the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't show any improvement or is just kind of lagging behind to keep up with the pack, I will cull them. There has been times where I've let them go, and maybe there was just some sort of anomaly in the soil where it just didn't get what it needed. It got shaded early on or something, but I've never had one of those plants that I've kind of babied become like the winner.
Yeah.
It's always kind of fallen into the middle category, it seems. So like it made me start to feel safe. Like it's okay to cull plants early on. You know, babying one that's really slow, if you have the ability to do it, it could be really rewarding. But more often than not, what I found that it's kind of not worth it, your time.
Yeah, fair enough. And like as just a straight grower, that's where I tend to struggle. Even if it's like rentish, it's if I only pop four of those, we're gonna see where it goes. But definitely, if you're going on scale, you want to be making these changes, making these sacrifices. But as you hunt, I mean, we're all looking for something. What's your white whale, Derek? What do you want? What are you looking for ultimately?
It changes with every seed project, I think. Like right now, I'm just super excited about popping these big bud seeds and just kind of going back to the early 2000s, when like that stuff was really popular. And that was like kind of all you could find in some of these areas. And looking through those and then kind of, um, you know, crossing it to modern stuff to see what it can do. I, I just the goals and stuff change every project, and when you're doing this all the time, it's easy to kind of get burnt out on something where you're like, oh, like my unleaded even where it's like I've grown this 1,000 times, you know, I'll put it on the back burner for a little bit while I work on this other stuff. And,
Yeah.
after growing that for a little bit, you're like, man, you get charged up to want to pull the unleaded back out, or whatever these old projects are back out. So it just seems to change. I'm always looking for just something flashy and new. I do really think the high is important. It can't just have all the looks. You know, the effect is really important to me. So I've always try and factor that in some level on every project.
Very cool. It's all about that smoke test, right? Now, what about a project that, I mean, you started off, you popped some beans, and I mean, it went off the rails completely. It failed spectacularly. I mean, it's always great to succeed, but tell me about time when something didn't go great.
Oh man, I can tell you a few times.
I think we
Um,
all do.
there was one time in specific, I just saw this happen to somebody. I popped, a couple hundred seeds of some rare stuff that I had. I was doing a bunch of outcrossing. I was looking through a bunch of different things. Get them all popped. It's week 1 or 2. They're sprouting up, getting their first set of true leaves. Wake up the next morning, and oh, it's just stalks with nothing on them.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, what the hell? And it was a mouse. A mouse came and ate all the tops of the plants, man. And I was so mad. And
Okay, I feel that, man. I'm gonna throw just a video in the corner there. Um, I actually had mice get into my flower room and they tunneled under my plants. I didn't realize it until the one plant was doing some weird stuff, and like this. Oh, it was wild, man. So I
dude,
feel that.
they wreak a little havoc. I've had them burrow in, like you said, like through the square holes in the pot. And I'm like,
Yeah,
why is there dirt on this, like coming out of this every day? And then I realized, like, I pulled it up and there's like tunnels coming. I'm like, what the hell?
little bastards. They
So,
dug right under my door, like chewed the silicone out and everything. So the stuff's still well in there. That's pro tip, folks. If you're dealing with my steel wool in all the holes, so
yeah,
that's
mouse
hilarious.
traps, man. I mouse
Oh,
trap,
oh,
got some mouse
absolutely.
traps in there right away, dude, and I got them.
Yeah.
But then I was always paranoid about it. So that was one of those prominent stories that's like, I'll never forget
Yeah.
because I just lost so much good stuff. I was so mad.
Oh, that's painful. That is so painful. Well, let me flip it around then. Time when you popped a bunch, you're doing a project, and it just blew your mind, absolutely exceeded all expectations.
Man, every time I mess with the unleaded, it seems to just do better and better. And, the first round I did of the F1s, we did a small hunt. And then I did another hunt to make the F2s. And it was just like every single one that I was finding was a keeper. Like, I don't know how I'm going to like segregate this. So I have them all, and in seed segregated in their F2 form. And every once in a while I'll pop them and I just always find something really cool. And even when I work with it in outcrossing and making S1s, and we did a whole room. I think I popped 55, and they were just, they got like 7 feet tall, and they didn't need a trellis, and they were just all huge buds, and the high was good. And, it was like, it was hitting the mark on everything. I think we got some of those to test like 36% and by a farmer in Vermont. And it tested so high, they have THC restrictions. He couldn't sell the flower. It's like, you know,
You played yourself.
yeah, and it's crazy because in every other state that doesn't have restrictions, that
Yeah.
would be the top dollar one. And then
Oh
these
yeah.
states that have restrictions, it's like, you're shooting yourself in the foot for growing some chronic.
It's funny how things work out sometimes. Uh, One of my favorite topics: hash making, rosin making, this, that, and the other.
Hmm.
How does your stuff wash? How does your stuff perform for squishing?
Yeah, so that's one that the past like 2 years we've been kind of dialing in, making selections and then reversing or breeding them with specific other other reversals or males to get plants that wash within the population. So you're
Hmm.
not just like hunting for one gem. Obviously, you're going to have variation between the population, but if everything's over like 2%, a lot of the guys in the farms seem really happy that they're able to you get that kind of return. Um, I think the unleaded F2 stuff that I have right now is probably some of the best washing stuff that I have. The population is between like 3 to 5%. Just running a handful of them, like you could find one that's probably even higher than that. It's putting off really sandy resin. And like I said too, like the high is there too. That effect that you're looking for um is there. And we've had people get back to me about just the effect of that one where it's like that's their favorite. Like these guys who dab every day need some powerful stuff, and it's like we've had a really good response with people smoking the unleaded and just taking them, you know, where they want to be without taking a whole gram.
Very cool, man. Very cool. What about the guys who are just getting started? Where did you struggle when you got started? What kind of advice would you offer a first-time breeder?
Gosh, first time breeder, just have fun, you
Yeah.
know, and observe, be really, really observant. I think that's one of the things that I've gained the most experience of just being observant of watching the plants grow, watching how the males disperse pollen, um, how the seeds develop, how quickly they develop. You'll see the pollination happen overnight, nearly, and them form seeds within like 2 days. And it's just really cool to see. So just learn from your experiences and, have fun. If it's stressing you out, something's not working. A lot of these guys have trouble reversing plants every once in a while. Don't be afraid to try again. Don't give up. It's where I see a lot of guys give up. And it's like, it's not that hard. You know how many times that I've failed? Like I've had plants not reverse. I've had males that drop pollen and the plants didn't really accept the pollen or, had something happen where it just didn't work out. The female aborted all the seed for some reason. And, it's easy to quit.
Yeah, discouraging things can happen, but hey,
Yeah.
growing's a patient man's game, man. You really just
Right.
gotta kind of take what happens and run with it. Just quickly touching on the reversal. What's your method? Are you an STS guy? Do you like the colloidal silver?
Yeah, I'm an STS guy. I like the sodium thiosulfate with the silver nitrate. That's what we're using. I have
Very
a
cool.
couple other things up my sleeve for that I add to that, but there's all kinds of recipes you can get. I do suggest to most guys that are looking to do a reversal is do some informational study on what the universities are doing for the hemp because it's crazy the drastic difference in the recipes and information you'll have from something like Google Scholars and the forums. You know, regardless of experience, these guys are doing it on scale. They're seeing what works every time, and they're doing generational breeding this way with hemp. And you have guys on the forums dogging stuff, and so I'd be very weary of where you get your information from about reversals.
Yeah, and you gotta be careful with some of that stuff, so especially when you start playing with the chemicals and whatnot. Because I know
Yeah, don't breathe them
the
in.
SDS can be a little dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Derek, absolutely fantastic chatting with you today, man. You obviously have a wealth of knowledge, been in the game for a long time. Certainly encourage folks to go check you out. Instagram link down below. But I just want to round up with the last question. Kind of, you talked a little bit about some stuff that you've got coming out, but any big upcoming drops? Any other places we might want to try and find you here?
Gosh, yeah, you can. I got a website, sunleafseed.com. Um, you can check it out. I got all the menus up there. Still working on getting some pictures in the payment method, which is still a little tricky in North America
Yeah.
here right now. Um, and yeah, watch. I'm gonna bring back some nostalgic stuff. I'm looking for a bunch of clones right now. We're gonna do some big bud crosses, and I'm gonna bust the Northern Lights back out, and we're gonna do some more Northern Light crosses and reversals. So, that's kind of where I'm headed with that. It seems like everybody's using really common stuff right now, so we're just gonna jump backwards for a little bit.
Super cool. Well, stuff up and coming, guys. Go check them out. Check them out. Sunleaf Seed Co. Definitely sounds like you got it going on. Derek, thank you very much for stopping by today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we out.